Good afternoon. My name is Susan Doyle and I'll be your facilitator today. I'd like to welcome you to this Lean Construction Ireland webinar presented by John O'Connell, Senior Contracts Manager with OCC Construction. The title of this webinar is Delivering MMC Residential at Scale Through Last Planner. If you have a question, please type in the question box and we will consolidate and ask John after the presentation. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is John O'Connell. John is a chartered engineer, graduated from University of Galway with both a Bachelor of Engineering and Mechanical Engineering in Civil Engineering. He is the current chairman of Engineers Ireland West Region and works as Senior Contracts Manager at Galway-based OCC Construction, leading design and build projects across the commercial, residential and medtech industries. John has championed the implementation of MMC and lean construction across all projects, the digital transformation of OCC's design and construction activities, the integration of leadership in energy design and passive pause principles to elevate their sustainability, safety, quality and delivery. I will now pass you over to John to begin his presentation. Thanks, John.
Hi everyone, got a great introduction there. So today I am just giving an overview of my presentation. So I'll discuss OCC's progress to date, the strategies we currently employ, challenges and learning associated with lean construction and its implementation with OCC. I'll go through a residential case study and a commercial case study also. So our lean construction journey started in 2021 when we identified the problem. Traditional build and delivery was not achieving results for OCC. There was a shortage of skilled labour, there's too many contractors and sites, the sites running behind programme, and generally everything was working out of sync and we were failing across all sides. So obviously we had to make drastic changes. So step number one was looking at changing how we actually build our houses. So we looked at the implementation of modern methods of construction and lean manufacture. This led to us building our own off-site construction company called Greenframe and developing our own light gauge steel product, which is based out of a manufacturing facility in Derryfetta in northeast Galway. So this allowed us to focus in on the structural elements of our buildings and maximise efficiencies on our factory floor, take away any dependence on weather and so on, and really ensure that we can get the best value for money and minimise as much waste as possible through the manufacture process. So our next step then was design process improvement. So this is focusing on collaborative planning and workshops at early design stages, including the subcontractors as part of our design team on design and build projects. So we utilise the last planner system for the design stage of the projects to ensure we got everybody's views on board, ideas on board, and ensured we made a buildable design. This was generally before we got design sign-off on design and build projects, which allowed a lot of key items for subcontractors to be included, such as server soaps and answers that made their life easier. Our next step then was focusing on the delivery process improvement. So this is rolling out the last planner across all of our construction sites. We invested heavily in training to ensure every single member of our team was part of the last planner journey, whether it be an operative out on site through to senior management and everyone in between in purchasing and across all office staff. And because of this, everyone has appreciation of the full process, that everyone needs to be accountable for what they take responsibility for and what they commit to on a weekly basis for the whole project to be running smoothly. And the final step and what we're on at the minute is sustainability improvement. So this is bringing all aspects of the business together and utilising lean principles from purchasing, from an initial pricing through to delivery, including purchase and design and at handover stage. So just a couple of benefits from the past 3 years of utilising lean construction across our sites. We've gained a greater sense of cost certainty on projects because we're guaranteeing meeting tighter programs across our design and build projects. To date, all lean construction projects have been delivered on time, and we're decreasing the program. So overall, we're looking at a 20% saving in comparison to where we were in 2021 with traditional building methodology and no real great organisation to where we are now. So this does result in a lot of overheads savings, and also the maximisation of labour resources saves a lot of money for trades on sites. Regarding quality testing certification, because we've greater collaboration at the early stage of the project from subcontractors and the design team, we're finding a lot less issues when it comes to getting material certification and fully compliant, say, NACI systems together and brought all the way through the construction process, because it's all delved into deeply at an early stage rather than being drip fed throughout the construction process. Regarding health and safety, because there is such a focus of the coordination between trades on site and maximising the labour each trade carries out, we are seeing great reduction of incidents across our sites. Don't have the statistic there, but I think we're looking at probably about 30% less any last time incidents on site. Regarding sustainability, because we've brought a large amount of the manufacturer off the building site and onto a factory floor, we're seeing our waste overall being reduced by 15%, and we're working on increasing this at the minute as part of our sustainability commitment. And project risk avoidance. So this is a big thing for clients, so we can guarantee that a lot of the project risks will be gone through at an early stage rather than tackled at the end of a project. So because we're bringing on board BIM modelling, and because the early interaction between subcontractors, the main contractor and the design team, a lot of issues we would foresee on site are being solved when it's easy moved on a computer screen rather than when you're on site with bricks and mortar and try to fix it then. So overall, we are seeing a reduction in reworks across our sites of probably about 33%, which is a big item because ultimately we all want to walk away from a job at the end of a project, but happy with the way everything was carried out and with no long and strenuous snag lists. So just looking at the current strategies employed, we've invested heavily in MMC. We're aiming to maximise the capabilities of the latest technology, primarily in light gauge steel, but we also use different building types depending on the site. So looking at design improvement, we've created our own light gauge steel product, green frame light gauge steel, primarily used for construction of buildings between 3 and 5 stories. That's the sweet spot for that system. It's currently 250 units ongoing. And to commercial, we are utilising timber frame when we've units of 1 to 2 stories. And then looking at process improvement, so how are we making things better on site? We are utilising insulated concrete forms where applicable on site, and then looking at actual construction delivery. So this is our implementing the last planner system fully from initial idea conception through to handover. So I pulled this together just to show you basically what we are using in OCC as part of the last planner system. By no means are we experts, and I know each company will be different depending on what way you're set up and what projects you've on, but this is how we are running our last planner. So starting off, you'll have your master scheduling, which typically is your full duration of the project, and it can take the form of the picture on the right hand side there, which is a phase plan, but it'll be fully expanded. So the idea of it is to get your full construction program on one wall in your meeting room. And this will set your phase durations for the project that you can break down into your look-aheads, and it'll identify any major constraints of overlapping trades. Then we move on to phase planning, so what you should do. And this is your pull plan system. So based on the phases you've broken up in your master scheduling, you pull together a phase plan like is pictured on the right hand side. And this is built with the subcontractors on board. So I know with procurement and projects, it is hard to get subcontractors involved in an early stage, but it really does pay off if you can get them on board to make your or to make your phase program. So the way we tackled this was scheduled similar trays together. So bringing in M&E together, bringing in any structural trays together, facade completions, groundworks, and so on, and sitting down and going through the board for probably 2 to 3 hours and taking everyone's idea into consideration, whether it's the ground worker through to whether it's senior management of the company, to ensure if we can squeeze the program in any way possible that we maximize efficiencies on it. Then moving on to what we can do, so it's our 6-week look ahead. And it's pictured there on the right as a 5-week look ahead because we couldn't fit 6 weeks on the board, unfortunately. This is reviewed on a weekly basis, so typically on a Thursday afternoon, the full site team, so from junior engineer through to senior management, sits down on the project for probably 2 to 3 hours to plan out the next 5 to 6 weeks, and primarily focusing on the next 2 weeks, because we find you'll have the main control of your next 2 weeks, whether they're items you actually will get done, whether as you look into 6 weeks time you might wish to get them done, but until you've fully reviewed the weeks up until that, it's hard to commit fully and be accountable for them dates. And this is an area also where you can use to get the project back on track. So if you have your phase plan or your master plan that's running 2 to 3 weeks behind program, typically we don't move the items on the phase plan board. We use the 5 to 6 week look ahead to bring the program back on track. So whether it's more resources are needed or products need to be sourced or subcontractors brought on board, they're typically brought in on the 5 to 6 week look ahead to bring the project back on program. And then we've the weekly work plan. So on review of the 5-week look ahead, you will be rating the previous week's completions, so percentage complete of all the work items, and feeding that data back in and trying to figure out why we've lost time or why we haven't met the aims we set out the week before. And this is also shared with all the subcontractors on site, whether it be the cleaner through to the carpenter through to facade finishes. So everyone's on the same page and knows what's going on the project. And this also includes a photographic report of the site to give everyone an update on it. And then moving on to the daily whiteboard. So this is typically carried out every morning and goes through resources on site. So you're taking your milestones from your 6-week look ahead and delving into more detail on daily basis, and you're taking the resource numbers committed on the weekly work plan and comparing what's planned versus what's actually on site, and find this board is a good call to action for typically management. If it really does highlight if a contractor has committed to having 10 to 15 operatives on site and there's only 8, that if you receive this before 9 o'clock in the morning, you can actually do something about it and follow up with it. And then once a week we hold a review workshops. This kind of feeds back into the 6-week look ahead and looking at percentage of works done, works complete, were there any reworks required across the site, and what do we need to change to avoid these reworks. So I've gone through the process there of how we're running it regarding construction delivery on site. But if this is utilised early in the project when you have design team and subcontractors, it's typically just changed to allow, rather than work items happening on site, their design delivery dates, whether it be submissions, RMAs, or FIs, and so on. And it is a good way of keeping the full design team, contractor and subcontractors coherent on the design, and everyone has their chance to have their input on a weekly basis. So I'm just going to bring us through Kinvara case study. So on this project there was 28 units, and we use this case study of ourselves. It was the first project we utilised the green frame like a steel system, and we also tested the AMVIC ICF system in phase 1 and phase 2 of the estate. And this was the first project that we fully implemented the last planner from design all the way through to completion. So day 0, which you can see on the right hand side of the factory floor, wall panels are complete, windows are in, wall panels are base coated, and on site we've our roofs prefabricated, ready to go, scaffold erected, and on site all the services are in, boundary walls complete, gardens are levelled, it's ready for house installation. So while we were spending our time carrying out the design process through last planner, we were also on site carrying out the groundworks and getting everything ready for the units to be delivered. So just have a series of videos here of a typical block of semis going together. So day 1 on site, all the ground floor wall panels are lifted into place. You'll see the service opes in the panels. Through collaboration with the M&E contractors, we've pre-drilled all the mechanical ventilation, and also we've made allowances for the electrician with grommets built in the walls, so when they are running the cabling, that it will be a very simple process. Day 2 on site, we are lifting in floor cassettes, which, as you can see, have made provisions for all the M&E. So the mechanical pipework has already been set in place, which saves for any works on site for the mechanical contractor. As you can see, it's a windy day in Kinvara and the panels are blowing nicely. Day 3, we have the upper ground floor wall panels. Taking this panel as an example, all the air tightness membranes are already in place and overlapped internally, so they can be joined with ease, which does help with the air tightness. And day 4 and 5, the roof has been pre-assembled on site and is lifted into place. And final day, gables are on, roofs are latted and felted. So by the end of day 5, you have a fully airtight, fire compliant, weather tight block of semi-detached houses. So the first units obviously didn't come together like that, and the only way we used each block on the estate as an opportunity to learn for the whole project team, from teleporter driver driving on site through to senior management. So that was the final block of semis in the estate. You can see a lot of the learnings have been incorporated, and all the ideas from subcontractors were incorporated to make their life easier. So regarding finishing the units, in a period of 6 weeks, they were fully finished and houses were ready for handover. A lot of this was mainly down to the collaboration and bringing everyone through their lean construction journey. Just taking a look at Galway case study. So here's a project on the east side of the city. There's 102 units we're currently working on. So this is a snapshot from last March. So in the rear development, you've 2 apartment blocks and a selection of houses all the way through. So again, we went through the same process here and taking a block by block basis and making changes all the way through from subcontractors tying in with the design team and through nearly all elements. So each block got more efficient as we went along, and it's still a learning process. So just looking at the same site just 12 weeks later, see the 2 apartment blocks in the rear have been completed and the houses done through the estate and the duplexes have been erected, with the last units on the bottom left hand side being the most efficient to erect, taking approximately a week and a half to get all the structure up and roof on. For a block of duplexes was a massive win for all involved. And regarding the commercial case study, so this was actually the first commercial project we used lean construction on, and it was the first one that we're really seeing the results of the last planner system. It looks like it goes together like a jigsaw puzzle on the video, but in background in reality there was a lot of planning that went on with the design team. So this wasn't design and build, it was a client-led design team which bought into the last planner system, and ultimately were the success of the project and of its delivery. Challenges and learnings from lean construction and MMC. So this is just based on our experience to date. So regarding the MMC optimized project, you still will have the detailed design approvals, and we can commence groundworks on site while we're building off site and continuously designing the buildings as we go, block at a time. The on-site assembly time is significantly less, and certification and handover period is a lot less because we've spent so much time in detailed design, and through the collaboration of design team and subcontractors, a lot of the issues we see on handover projects are removed from our program. So there is significant, the 20% time saving at the end is very significant in comparison to a traditional site build project, which we were experiencing a lot of unexpected risks, labour, weather, safety issues on sites, and the certification and handover process was prolonged due to not having a lot of the issues trashed out at an early stage. For building on the challenges and learnings from lean construction and MMC, there is a need for greater collaboration for the contractor, design team, and planning stage, and we found the best way to facilitate that is through implementing last planner and making everyone accountable for their delivery dates on a weekly basis and breaking it down rather than giving design teams free rein and prolonging the design program. Design freeze, so the more time we can spend pre-construction stage getting the most views from different trades and more heads you can bring together, while you're playing around with a 3D model before we go to site, we're finding that you're saving 4 times the amount of time it'll take to fix that problem on site. Regarding structural systems, we are looking at like steel as preferred methodology for high rise and timber frame for low rise residential, and continuity and repetition. So as you see, it's kind of continuous improvement process from when you're building on site and fully maximizing how lean you can get. You're never going to be perfect, but you can always be part of an improvement process. So we are finding great wins as we progress through projects, but in the long run, if buildings are repeated and there is a bit of continuity of what you can put out, if say the standardized 3D our 3-bed block of semis are utilised on other projects. A lot of the learnings that we have gained to date can be easily replicated, and a lot of the data that you do collect as part of the lean construction process can be analysed and utilised to everyone's benefit in the future. Just giving a snapshot of what's next for us regarding lean construction. So there is a modern construction campus built in Mount Lucas in Q3 of this year. So we are going to be involved in 5 of them units, and we are hoping to fully document and record our lean construction process and our last planner process through, and make it available to all involved, just to see how lean we can actually make a unit. So we will have different build types down there between semi-detached houses, terraces and apartments. So it will be formed into a case study that will be available for all in the future. And that sums up my presentation today. I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thanks, John. I'd like to thank John for a very insightful and interesting presentation. We'll now move on to the Q&A session. As I said earlier, if anyone has any questions, just type them into the question box and I'll ask John. We already have a few questions in already. John, what BIM technologies do you use and recommend?
Screen up blank there. So with the Leica steel, we are using Vertex, and typically for the architectural packages, which every building is being modelled, we are using Revit, and recommend both of them work well together, and we've had no issues to date.
Okay, brilliant. Another question in, by how much time did the design duration increase?
It didn't increase because we fully utilise the last planner system, which typically when you're working with a design team and they say they'll need a pre-construction phase of 3 to 4 months, there's very little accountability on what they're actually going to get on an output wise that on a weekly basis. But if you bring them into your last planner process and review it weekly and see how they follow through on their action items, are they accountable for delivering, whether it be foundation stage or whatever part of that building, we found is actually decreased the design stage process and makes it more efficient for all involved.
Okay, brilliant. How are you finding getting subcontractors involved in the last planner system?
So initially it was fairly hard with subcontractors, but I think once you get their buy-in and they realise that you're taking the planning of their operatives into your hands to make it more efficient for them. So at the end of the day, they're going to make more money and their life will be easier when everything is fully coordinated and that they know they can maximize their efficiencies on site. So look, we're working on it the last 3 years. It's not perfect at the minute, but it will be sometime in the future. But the subcontractors, like year on year, they're seeing results and they're getting in and out of projects and they're making money. I think that's the most important thing for them. And once you have a happy subcontractor, it's a happy life on site.
Okay. Another question in from an attendee. Do you find the last planner system easier to utilize in a D&B project rather than traditional build?
It depends on, say, it can work well if you get good buy-in from a client's design team, but if you don't have that, it is pretty hard because you're documenting project constraints as part of say your project constraints board, but you're actually not getting anything out of them. You're trying to make the design team accountable, but they might not follow through on it, and that does have massive effects on the rest of your plans in your lean construction program. So it is kind of design team by design team basis. It does work well on traditional projects if you get buy-in really, but if it can be demonstrated to the client and they push on their design team, I think that does really help.
Okay, okay. Has it taken long to fully roll out on all projects?
It's taken about 2 years now, and it's a constantly revolving process with changes being made every probably 3 to 4 months to try and make it better for everyone. But I think that's the whole point of lean, is you're never going to be 100%. If you can aim to be 85% and continuously improve, you're better off.
Okay, perfect. Have you implemented subcontractors' ideas following their early intervention?
Yes, so I think this is one of our biggest wins, where necessarily the design team might know the buildability of what they're trying to design, and when you do bring the subcontractor on board, whether it be take the electricians for example, if all his containment runs can be fully incorporated into your design, it means that it's an awful lot lighter work for him, and he's going to get through in and out the doors a lot quicker. And this carries through to airtightness contractor. If simple changes can be made on the factory floor regarding making membranes easier to access and the actual buildability of it, it can result in massive time and cost savings out on site. So it's definitely one of the key things we've brought on board since we have used Last Planner, and it's paid off the most.
Okay, okay. Another question from attendee: do you monitor accuracy of the 6-week look ahead against planned work?
Yeah, so we monitor it on a weekly basis. So when we sit down as part of our Last Planner meetings, each work item from the previous week is rated on a percentage, and then you document if it didn't achieve 85%, what's the reason behind it. Whether it was another contractor that affected them, or whether it was poorly planned work item, or so on. We collect all that data, so at any stage when you're reviewing a project and you have a certain trade that's not performing, you can pull out the data of his last whatever 10 to 15 weeks in site, and you can see, okay, he's consistently not met his goals, and you can trash out what's it boiling down to, whether it is resources or whether it is poor workmanship and so on. So yeah, I think it is a really, really important part of the process, and there's a lot to be gained from rating it on a weekly basis.
Okay, perfect. Maybe 2 or 3 questions in one question from an attendee here. Is it challenging to transport panels in densely congested cities? How do you manage this safely, and does it limit you?
Good question. It is challenging, but generally it does be carried out in early morning or evening runs. So to be honest, it hasn't really been a constraint to date, and I don't see it being a constraint in the future.
Okay, perfect. One more question in at the minute. What is the next step in Last Planner for OCC?
So it is a continuous improvement process. Primarily at the minute, we are a visual-based Last Planner system where it's a lot of boards been used on sites, and including post-its and so on. So I think the next step would be to digitize it. But again, that will take a period of time to get everyone trained up in a new system and to get the buy-in from subcontractors and so on. So that is definitely something we're going to look at in the future.
Okay, perfect. They're all the questions in the minute. Do you have any last comments before we sign off, or are you okay?
No, if anyone wants any more info, my contact details are on screen there. You can drop me a mail, and I'm happy to share. I think the more ideas we get across the board in lean construction, the better for everyone, to make everyone more efficient.
Absolutely. We've one more question just squeezed in there. Have you looked at systems for digitizing the Last Planner?
We're currently looking at 3 or 4 systems at the minute, and it's definitely a work in process. So won't have the names in hand.
Okay.
But I'm sure Lean Construction Ireland can point you in the right direction.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, sincerest thanks again to John for today's webinar presentation. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. Information will be sent out shortly in relation to the next webinar taking place in April. For information on this and other webinars, the annual conference, the annual book of cases and other LCI resources, please visit leanconstructionireland.ie and follow the Lean Construction Ireland LinkedIn group page. Finally, thank you to everyone who attended today, and we very much look forward to meeting you at future Lean Construction Ireland webinars. Thanks, John. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.